I'm Megan Skidmore, and welcome to the Beyond the Shadow of Doubt. I'm a woman, daughter, sister, spouse, mother, life coach, and person of faith on a mission to normalize asking questions and allowing doubts on a faith journey and all aspects of life. Join me as I bring this traditionally taboo topic out of the shadows of shame and into the light. I firmly believe we normalize through more talking and engaging in discussion. More talking peels back, exposes, and erases the layers of shame associated with asking questions and allowing doubts. When we are more authentic about our journey, we are more powerful because shame has no power in the face of authenticity. Beginning October 5th, the Dallas Hope Charities Collective Hope Coalition will be hosting their first ever book club and wrap up in November in honor of Hunger and Homelessness Awareness Week, November 13th through the 18th. Every week, we'll be discussing Dr. Brandon Andrew Robinson's book, Coming Out to the Streets, and how the book ties in to the Dallas Hope Charities fight to end hopelessness. It begins Thursday, October 5th through Thursday, November 16th. If you would like more information, please send an email to chc@dallashopecharities.org. Books can be purchased on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, UC Press, or through used bookstores. If cost is a barrier, please reach out for alternative options. Welcome, everybody. I am Megan Skidmore, your host of the Beyond the Shadow of Doubt podcast. So grateful that you could join me and be here with me and my guest, Mark Steele, who is a parent of an LGBTQ plus kiddo. Actually, I think Mark has more than one, and I'll let him share all about that in just a minute. But I believe we met in an LDS group that is specifically for transgender / non-binary identities. And I've appreciated getting to know you a little bit better and through this process of having you come on my podcast. And your story is such a great one and a beautiful one. I don't want to take away from it. So I'm going to turn the time over to you, Mark. Thank you so much for being here.
I'm glad to be.
I'm thrilled to have you. I wanted to start out, Mark, if you could just share with me and our listeners your background, just your origin story is what I like to call it. You know, your family, your upbringing, where you're from, your faith of origin, if, you know, whether it was LDS or something else, your profession, education, all of those things that give us a nice, well-rounded picture of you.
Sounds good. I'll include some information about my wife. She would join us, but she's got some health issues.
Okay.
But my wife, Peggy, and I both grew up in Southern California. We're both in our early 70s right now. So growing up in California means late 50s, early and throughout the 60s, et cetera. We both were part of very active LDS families and participated in the church from the very beginning. I went on a mission to Germany from 1970 to 72, and we met soon after and fell in love and got married. We've lived in a number of places throughout the world, both growing up in California, but we've also lived in Utah and in South Carolina, in the United States. We've also lived for several years in Saudi Arabia and a couple of years in Samoa. We taught in the church schools there. And after we married, we had a few years of having difficulty having children. So while we were in Samoa, we adopted a couple of Samoan babies. Mm-hmm. So they are our two oldest children. And then I've had 3 since, so 5 children total.
Okay.
I started off career-wise teaching English as a second language. One of the reasons we were in a couple of those countries. And at one point decided that I needed to change careers. So I'd gotten a couple of degrees from Brigham Young, final one being linguistics. And then we went on to Utah State to get a degree in instructional design. And since then, I've worked in various training modes, developing training, teaching, and managing training programs, primarily for software companies. And I retired a little over a year ago. And so we live now in Cedar Hills. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. all of our children live in Utah. We're fortunate in that regard. So we have 5 children, 11 grandchildren, and 1 great grandchild. And 4 of our 5 children have been or are married. Kids, grandkids range in age from, well, early to late, kind of.
So you actually have 11 grandchildren?
Yes.
And 1 great. Wow, that's wonderful. So your first 2 kiddos were adopted. They're from Samoa originally. And then you had 3 more that are biological.
Yes.
Okay. So that's a beautiful start. You have a lot of history there, a lot of experience in other countries and other cultures, and just geographically, their traditions and their way of life, I'm sure, influenced, or you were able to learn and to experience that. I'm sure that was fascinating. I love that. And I'm curious to know how that might have influenced or, had an effect on your faith journey. I started this podcast because I wanted to contribute to this normalization of having conversations surrounding our faith journeys, specifically when we have questions that come up for us, when we are presented with new information in some way that just gives us pause, that we struggle to reconcile with our lived reality and this new information, or maybe it's a new understanding or a paradigm shift. Maybe I would love to move into talking about your faith journey. Include as much as you want to share with us. You shared your background, your origin. Would love if you could dive into that.
Sure. So my wife and I have been in the church lifelong, and we continue to be active and believing Latter-day Saints. And let me talk about 1 or 2 things from when maybe things seemed less complicated. At the beginning of my mission, when I was in the language training mission and learning some of the lessons that we'd be teaching people and et cetera, it occurred to me what a great responsibility it was that I had we were going to be asking people to change their lives dramatically. And I felt an additional need to have a stronger, both more comprehensive and more detailed testimony of what I would be teaching, so that I would have some confidence and mental clarity in my belief and into the details that we'd be teaching them. So I spent some additional time there in the building, praying, studying, considering. And I remember one day in a room on my own where I was able to get an experience that was very meaningful to me, confirming for me the beliefs that I would be preaching. And I know a little over a year later, I was sitting on a bus in Munich, Germany, reading some German scriptures, the Doctrine and Covenants, and I came across the part where God says to Oliver Cowdery, if you desire further witness, cast your mind upon the night that you cried unto me in your heart, that you might know concerning the truth of these things. Did I not speak peace to your mind concerning the matter? What greater witness can you have than from God? And that really did speak to me. And I felt that was the experience, the kind of experience that I'd had where there was peace in my heart. That's continued quite a bit. When we things in church history or differences of opinion or being with other church members has never affected me much as far as my relationship with the gospel and the church. We did live in a Samoan ward for part of our time there, and things were a little bit different, but for us, it was more of an adventure and learning and appreciating those differences and trying to get over ourselves and our traditional way of how we should be done. And then in our time in Saudi Arabia, the wards that we were in were made up of all of expatriates. There were no, of course, Saudi Arabian members of the church, still are not. And we met people from England, from the Netherlands, quite a number from the Philippines, various countries and various levels of experience. And that was wonderful. And we bonded with people there in these wards in other countries because we were all strangers in a strange land. Being in Saudi Arabia got me a chance to look more closely at Islam and Muslims and how they view life and how they live life, and generally maybe administrative aspects of what they demanded as religious leaders from their people and from people living in their country was sometimes irritating, but grew impressed with the religion and with the run-of-the-mill people that were there. When our fourth child came out to us shortly after high school graduation as bisexual, we were surprised. We hadn't really considered or given deep thought to LGBTQ issues and experiences. And we were surprised, didn't know how to react to it. So we did have to consider things on what did this mean for our understanding and relationship with the gospel, with the church, and with our children. We wondered, how should we react to this? Should we reject our child? Should we sort of half-heartedly be with our child, not condemning, but not really supporting either? Or should we open arms, unconditional love, and continue to fold them in? And as we were considering that, we needed some time sort of be on our own and discuss what this was going on. So we went up to the Gateway Mall up in Salt Lake, and we're wandering around, talking, thinking, and we saw a Barnes and Noble bookstore, and we thought, let's go in there. We didn't know why, but we just wanted to go, and we were led almost immediately to a display that turned out to be Carolyn Pearson's book, No More Goodbyes. And so we grabbed it, sat down there in the store for about an hour and perused lightly the book, and then bought it and brought it home to read it more carefully. And there were some things in it that really stood out to us. So one was the center section of the book had many families' experiences with what they did with their children or their other family members or friends when they came out. Some left the church immediately. Some rejected their children. Some loved their children but stayed in the church. And all were presented fairly and openly and opened our eyes to what the possibilities were. And Carolyn finished her book with a call for us as Latter-day Saints, as Mormons, to circle the wagons with our children and keep them with us as a means to show love, to be loving, to bolster them, to save lives. And we felt from that an inspiration to heed that kind of call. We weren't perfect in it. One of the first things I did when my child came out was look up some organizations online, and I saw one that promoted the notion of these are ways that your child can become free of their same-sex attraction. And so I enthusiastically showed this to Jack, and he was like, Dad, that was the wrong approach to take. And I learned from it, but I was embarrassed. And there were probably other ways that happened too. Also, with Jack, about a year or more so into that experience, so he was 19, almost 20, further experience and reflection and understanding on his part led him to come out as transgender. And that was a second round for us to try and get used to. We were even less familiar with it than we were with other orientations, identities. I know he was away at Utah State during that time, so he wasn't living with us. But we periodically, every week or two, sent some care packages and that. And I remember I couldn't even bring myself initially to write his new name. And so I just write the initials, J.K. Steele, on it. Now, that's still an embarrassment, but it's a reality that it happened. And it took me a few months to open my arms more and learn enough more and change. There were some changes, but I did. And we have a great relationship now. And he was, for the most part, pretty patient with us and stuck with, reminding us of things that we could be doing or pointing us to things. So our relationship with the church changed a little bit too. We fully support his marriage, and he married several years into his experience, knowing that he was transgender, and his wife knew that he was transgender, and we love them. They have a 2-year-old child now, and they're a wonderful family, and we fully support and agree and love the choices that they've made with that. And that has presented us at different times with different elements of disagreement with the church. We wondered initially, was this going to push us out? And the church has been fine with our viewpoints and status on that. But it means that we believe differently from other LDS when they consider things like same-sex marriage. We have different ideas of what could be solutions to this, but trying to think if there's other things that I wanted to mention. I think that's about it with where, so maybe our changing views on some church doctrines have given us experiences that are a little bit different, but we're not terribly argumentative or pushy with it, but just consistent. And we've found ways, even when we've had spirited discussions with other church members, to keep belief and action in it.
So I want to thank you so much for your open and candid sharing of your journey up to this point. I wanted to back up a little bit and ask you a little bit more about. You said your kiddo came out first shortly after high school graduation as one identity, and then it was a little bit later that they essentially shared more information with you about how they had learned, other elements about their own identity, and then identified as transgender. About how long after was that?
That was coming out initially as bisexual was about 6 months after high school. And it was about a year after that when he came out to us as transgender. He'd been learning and considering this for a few months before he felt comfortable or safe coming out to us. He'd gone to a panel discussion where there had been a transgender person who described how they felt and how life was. And he thought immediately, he's really describing me.
Yeah.
And so he decided to learn more about it and became more and more convinced that that was truly what he was experiencing.
I think this is so important to point out. Sometimes our kids, because, in our society and historically, sexuality really it's not just a topic most chat about. It's just a less discussed topic. And so I think our kids don't always have the vocabulary that they need to express what is going on for them, what they're feeling, what they're experiencing, just all of it. And so that makes sense to me that your kiddo would have shared. I heard, them talking about this, and that it just really resonated with me. It sounded like, yeah, that describes me. And I know some parents, it's confusing, and to those that are, a part of our extended families, to try to understand that. And I say to that, that's okay. right? They
Yes.
are learning to understand themselves as well. And really, our job is to love them unconditionally through it.
That's a great point, because some people would say, see, they really didn't feel that way. They didn't know who they were.
Uh-huh.
Just confusion, favorite word of this last year or two. And when really it's just, there's virtually everything in our lives that we grow in and get a better perspective on and come to understand things more. And it can take maybe a short time, but it can take a long time. And I'm sure Jack would say that his own journey has evolved since then. He's expressed ways that he feels a little bit differently about who he is, and he identifies as non-binary, transgender, masculine now, and
Uh-huh.
that's a more complete view of where he's at now, and the vocabulary and feelings he has have a right to change, just as ours have a right to change about just about anything in our lives.
Yeah. So thank you for sharing that. You also mentioned after your child came out 6 months after high school that the way you described it, you and your wife were calm, but you really weren't certain exactly how to respond to this news. Keep a distance, cut them off, welcome but not accept, which is another way of saying not affirm that what they're sharing with you is really and truly how they're experiencing life, or to love and hold her at the time, because your child is assigned female at birth and now identifies as transgender masculine. So to love and hold them in your arms. Can you share a little bit more? That has got to be one of the most difficult parts, I believe, of this journey, because you have been taught something for your entire life. And it's your faith, it's your religious beliefs, your spiritual beliefs, we could say, religious beliefs. And I don't know, for me, it was like my soul was being torn apart from inside. Ooh, sorry about that. To try to go through this wrestle. It very much felt like a wrestle from the inside out. And so in our pre-interview paperwork, you wrote that we agonized how we should respond. That's pretty significant, right?
Yes.
I'm just curious, where do you think that came from for you specifically? Hopeful Spaces is a Dallas Hope Charities component of Hopeful Discussions, sponsored by Mercedes-Benz Financial Services USA. It's a free monthly parent, ally, or caregiver support group facilitated by Megan Skidmore Coaching. Email chc@dallashopecharities.org for more info.
I guess one way to say it is tradition and ignorance. It's all we'd grown up with, and it's all we knew at the time. Although there were obviously LGBTQ things happening before this time, it hadn't affected us directly, so we didn't really pay much attention to it. In 2008, 2009, we probably started out with similar attitudes to what we'd had in 2000 or in 1980. And so we had to, but it was interesting to me. One of the first considerations when they first came out, that's 6 months after high school and that. So during that first encounter where we were faced with this and had to re-examine, one of the first things that popped into my mind was, well, our child can still get married, and in a married relationship, because we valued marriage and felt both from a moral and human perspective that it was a good thing, thought, well, that would solve pretty well all the problems, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that was naive on my part, considering the church's attitude toward it, that could be an answer. But certainly for life out of the church, it was definitely an answer. And interesting that it came to me and was an acceptance almost immediately of, well, this is a path forward. So it did take us a while. And if my son were here, if Jack were here, he'd be able to tell you, although I hope not dwell too much on, well, yeah, they did this and they did this and they did this, because hopefully we've grown beyond that. But it did take a little while. And then with transgender understanding it even less, it took another round of time before we could accept and allow and fully just relax and be loving parents with our child. So it took effort, and it was effort that made it more difficult for Jack than it should have been. What's interesting is that several years later, our youngest son also came out as gay.
Okay.
And we had known from his teen years that he probably was, but didn't really talk about it. We didn't really approach it or do with it at first in his own reactions, sometimes he was, strict and everything. And part of why he went on a mission was, as many have done, to go, okay, if I do this and do this well, I maybe be freed of this, God will help or whatever. But then in his own time, was able to come out, and then eventually could no longer be in the church and be who he was. So hopefully prior experience, ice-breaking experience with Jack also helped us with our youngest son, to where it was a more welcoming immediately kind of experience with him. I hope he's felt that way. Things have still kept us with the church too, if I can go ahead and speak about that.
Yeah, of course.
So some things work to go, we have differences now, but there are core doctrines that are important to us, that are strong in our belief, that we still deeply believe in. Things like the mission of Christ and the atonement and its role in our lives, a purposive existence after this mortal one. The importance of community as a means of making the church have a critical role in the gospel. As one of my relatives wrote in a book, Why the Church is as True as the Gospel, the opportunity to serve and be forced to deal positively with differences in each other in our congregations and et cetera. We also learned that we could remain in full fellowship with the changing beliefs that we've had, at least so far, and loving our children without restraint, supporting and believing in same-sex marriage as we do with heterosexual marriage, even disagreeing on at times with the way church leaders frame things. We found also that our shared experience with others helped family, friends, and some congregants with us as they worked with some of the same things that we had. They had some words that we had said in a Sunday school class or in a testimony or in another discussion where it was appropriate to learn about our own attitude toward our kids and that it could be successful. And we're not talking a lot of people, but we've had some small influence, and that small influence has been important to us and confirming of what we want to do. Also, occasionally, some things that we come across in scriptures or in church or leader statements bring us hope, that give us feel for the idea of reconciliation. It may be not till after this life, or it may take some dramatic change, but I think of President Eyring, and I'll quote from him. He said, "A prophet of God once offered me counsel that gives me peace. I was worried that the choices of others might make it impossible for our family to be together forever." So he said, "You are worrying about the wrong problem. You just live worthy of the celestial kingdom, and the family arrangements," this was the part that struck out to us, "the family arrangements will be more wonderful than you can imagine." I have no idea what those family arrangements, what that means. But it gives me hope that even that the two disparates can be brought together in God's time. And I hope that the time is sooner than later. There are other things too, but that one example is probably enough. Go ahead.
You've talked a little bit about navigating this space and how it's affected your faith community, how you've been able to point others in a direction and help them see a different point of view. Can you speak a little bit more to how this has been in, acknowledging this, asking of these questions and having these doubts within your faith community, and just what that part is like?
You mean how we come across, or examples of what things have happened that
I guess, did it feel like you could bring this up in your faith communities, whether it was one-on-one or in a classroom setting, or even in settings outside of the actual physical church building?
I do feel an ability to talk about LGBTQ matters in church. Places where it's happened has been like in a quorum meeting or in a Sunday school meeting, or even in the context of a testimony. At church, I want to frame them in ways that seem appropriate to the topic and the spirit.
Mm-hmm.
But I might talk about our experience. If we're in the middle of a lesson on working with our kids, or for example, and helping them understand the gospel, I might bring up that my own experiences with our children and the gospel, and some of them related to LGBTQ matters, that talk about how the first child that came out ended up talking with their four best friends who were members of the church. And each one of them listened politely, but then told them that, bore their testimony that what they were feeling was wrong. And
to your child?
Yes.
Okay.
And then left and never contacted my child again.
Mm-hmm.
Never.
That's hard. I'm sorry that happened.
Yeah, me too. And I don't know how my adult child feels about that now, 15 years later, but it still rankles with me. And so it's a way of giving an example of, this isn't the way to deal with this, to love people like this. Dropping the mic and walking away isn't a strategy that's loving. And I can talk about what I've done and where I'm coming from on that. So I'm not pounding my shoe on the podium to say, you must do all of these things, but I'm giving what I feel has been a proper response, or mistakes that I've made that I've corrected, or mistakes that I've seen in others that are not necessarily people there in the congregation. And that love is a key. It still remains a key. There are different ways where this sort of thing comes up. I read my ancestors' experiences as they converted to the LDS Church, and how their parents threw them out, how the parents refused to help them, how the parents never spoke to them again.
Wow.
That's a joining the Mormons experience. And coming to an awareness of who you are in your sexual orientation or gender identity is kind of a similar experience. You're moving into new territory, and your parents aren't there, and they use it. Do they use it to continue to find ways to love you and learn and grow themselves? Or do they use it as a way to push you further away, thinking maybe that will keep you from moving, but all it does is sever the family relationship, kill it?
That's so true.
So I don't always bring these up, even if something peaks in my mind, because if that's all that I talk about every time, then I think there are others that would maybe just turn me off. But
something really key that you said that I just want to emphasize is, are they going to use this as an opportunity to learn and to grow themselves? I think that's so essential to point out that there is a role for both in this scenario. I think, like in the instance of your child's friend, who you said bore their testimony that the feelings that they had were wrong. that came from a place of, I think, genuine concern because of how they had grown up and been taught. The idea of expanding their understanding and really listening to their friend, your child, versus telling them what to do. Because in order to listen to your kiddo's story means leaning into a lot of discomfort for the individual.
Sure.
And so this just, to me, emphasizes that this isn't a LGBTQ plus child problem. Correct. It's
Right.
It's something for all of us to get curious about and learn to listen, learn to really hear what people are communicating and sharing with us. And I believe that when we do that, we are truly walking on sacred ground. And you're right that by leaning into that discomfort, it is an opportunity for the parents or loved ones or family members to learn and to grow themselves.
Yeah.
So important. What are some of the frustrations or struggles that you would like to share that come with navigating this space? What would you like others to know about navigating this space, the intersection of having an LGBTQ plus child and coming from a conservative faith background, in your case, the LDS faith?
It's really important to be committed to learning, able to change, able to grow, but to also be patient for a lot of things. I still believe it's not always the approach that needs to be taken, but I believe one of patience is critical. Whether, let's say your LGBTQ child is irritated with you for still believing in and participating in a church that has hurt them so badly. They have that's a reasonable feeling to have. We can be patient with that, explaining as far as we can, not getting all rankled up ourselves and spitting back sort of thing. That's good. If it's with a church member that argues with us about, well, no, that's not right because of this and this and this and this. And sometimes an ended conversation is better than a continued one, or coming back to it a little or a lot later. Or with yourself, if you go, dang, I just misgendered my child for the 5th time in a week, and I got to stop doing this. Well, you can beat yourself up. You should beat yourself up and give the attention to that and work on it.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, you keep trying and be patient in being better. Be persistent in being better. Persistence and patience are all, and curiosity, like you mentioned, willingness to learn are all important qualities.
Absolutely. Persistence in being better. I really like that. Just consistency, keep trying, keep showing up. And I think that our kiddos care more about that than if we're doing it perfectly. Like you mentioned, I misgendered my child again, the nth number of times this week. I really believe it means so much to them when we're just trying. And a big part of that is keeping those communication lines open, being real, showing up as the humans that we are. So most parents want to connect with their kids. And in order to do that, you have to create a safe space, because that safe space allows you to establish trust, right? And I define a safe space as being able to be your true and authentic self, who you really are, without fear of rejection, loss of love, loss of belonging, loss of your community, your people, what have you. From what I've heard you say, you've had a lot of practice at creating these safe spaces with your with your kids, with your family. Can you share a little bit about how do you do that? What are your tips, your thoughts about creating safe spaces?
I've learned, I hope, I don't know if I'm perfect at it yet, but I've learned to have a different approach with my children when there are differences, particularly religious differences there. Years ago, I might have been always trying to find ways of what teaching, what 20-word sentence could I give them that would be the thing that snaps in them and brings them back to the church, for example, or gives them an idea of where they can pursue this a little differently or whatever. And I think I've come to feel that while I don't have to stop being offering teaching when somebody asks for advice or whatever, I can still be a dad that way.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to give that up, but I can let go of the need to correct and guide, always correct and guide and help prod to reform. I think is something that President Ballard said about 5 or 6 years ago when he was asked about how do we act with, say, family members who weren't active members of the church. His first sentence was, my answer is, please do not preach to them. Your family members or friends already know the church's teachings. They don't need another lecture. And now when I'm in their home, I just love them. At least that's what I hope I'm presenting in each thing that I do, that I'm not having to measure words to try and get the best thing out or make sure to include this or that to accomplish something on my own agenda.
Mm-hmm.
Just be with them and enjoy them and their children and my grandchildren, etc.
I think that is so wise. Let go of an agenda, any agendas. And, the thought occurs to me as you're talking, to love unconditionally doesn't mean you need to be right. It doesn't mean you need to be thinking of, like you said, these ideas, something to come up with that will get them to change their mind or get them to see things the way you do, I guess is a better way to put it.
Right.
But just allowing them to go and have their life experience, whatever that looks like, and let go of your agenda. That's perfect. That's so good. Anything else that comes to mind that you would like to leave with our listeners that you have learned along the way that you'd like to share?
Let me look quickly at notes and see if there's something that I really wanted to say but didn't. One of the other questions that you broached that made me think a lot was, what are my biggest struggles or frustrations with it? Knowing that currently the church has no real space for my LGBTQ children and grandchildren, that's painful and sorrowful to me. So it makes it even more important for me to ensure that they know I love them just as they are and who they can become.
That's beautiful. That brought a few tears. Thank you, Mark. That's really beautiful. This has been wonderful. The last question I like to ask my guests is, what does it mean to you to live beyond the shadow of doubt?
I think it's impossible to achieve. I think it's doubt, and I didn't always believe this, but I think doubt is an essential characteristic of life. And that while we shouldn't allow doubt to paralyze us and make us think, I can't do anything because anything or everything has something wrong to it. I don't mean that, but doubt is a part of life that helps challenge us, that helps us grow, that helps keep us humble and not locked in the iron gate of what we think we know.
Yeah.
And so I want to embrace some level of doubt and ambiguity in everything. Again, not to paralyze me and make me stop doing anything because anything could be wrong, but to allow me to consider alternatives, consider new things, and think about, in the circumstance, whatever that circumstance is, what's the best way to act or respond.
I love that. I too believe doubt is essential to our earthly sojourn, this path of learning, of growth, of expanding. So thank you so much. I have just a few questions that I throw out at the end.
Sure.
I'm only looking for, 1 or 2 word answers. It just gives us the opportunity to get to know you a little bit more. Would you call yourself an introvert or an extrovert?
I'm parts of both. I can talk and that with people, but at parties, after a certain amount, I've had enough, and I just go off to the side.
Awesome. Do you have a favorite book?
It's interesting. One that we read to our children as they were growing up is called The Bronze Bow. It's a fictional account of some children and young adults that live at the time of Christ. It was the first time I'd thought of Christ and the people around him outside scriptural bounds. It was very humane. There's another book, I can't remember the name, I think maybe Simple Gifts, but it's written by 2 or 3 hospice nurses where they talk about their experience caring for dying people and what the commonality of experience is in that.
Thank you. Those are great recommendations. Are you a night owl or a morning lark, would you say?
More night owl. Yeah, I'll be up till 12 or 1 and then still up at 8 o'clock or so.
Do you have a favorite artist?
Maybe Brian Krishiznik.
Okay, awesome. That's a new one for me. What about a celebrity crush?
My first celebrity crush was Haley Mills. It tells you
That is awesome.
and second was Julie Andrews, and that was similar times, early 60s.
I love it. I love that so much. That's great. Do you do still or carbonated water, or do you do diet soda, or what do you do?
So if carbonated is available, I'll get that. I like that.
Fun. And finally, the furthest place you've traveled. It sounds like you've traveled a lot. Where would you say the furthest?
Well, we actually, when we lived in Saudi Arabia, there was one year where we and our 3 older children did a round the world trip. So wherever we were in flight then, that's the furthest from here. But probably you could say furthest I've lived away from home is when we lived in Saudi Arabia.
But you've traveled around the entire world?
Yeah. Yeah, I flew from Saudi Arabia to Hong Kong and then New Zealand, and then up we went back to Samoa. This was about 10 years after we'd lived in Samoa.
Oh,
and
wow.
then to Hawaii, and then to the US, and then back to Europe and down to Saudi Arabia.
That is amazing. Wow. I'm a tiny bit jealous. What a fun, adventurous trip. I love it. Well, if folks wanted to connect with you or reach out to you with questions, is there an email address I can leave in the show notes for them? Or maybe is Facebook DMs easier for what would be a good way?
Probably email is best.
Okay.
The one that we've communicated with, but I'll spell it out for you. It's ACCELAN, Excellan. Excella was a company I worked for a while, but
okay.
It's Excellan@hotmail.com.
Okay. Got it. I will put that in the show notes. Mark, it has been a pleasure to meet with you. Thank you so much for your time, for your wisdom, and for openly, vulnerably, authentically sharing about you, your family, and your journey.
I appreciate that. And a shout out to, if any of my kids ever watch this, if I said something not quite right, and you can let me know. And if I ever have another opportunity, I'll correct the misapprehension. Love you all.
That's great. Thank you so much.
All right. Bye-bye.
I am so excited to share with you that the Love Loud Music Festival is coming to the Lone Star State. Founded in 2017 by Dan Reynolds, Love Loud is a catalyst to bring communities and families together to help ignite the vital conversation about what it means to unconditionally love our LGBTQ+ friends and family. Love Loud offers hope to people, letting them know they're not alone and encouraging acceptance in the home and community. It all begins with talking, sharing, and showing the realities of what LGBTQ+ individuals face daily. If you are in Texas and interested in volunteering along with me and some of your fellow Texans, please reach out and I will connect you with the right person. I would love to stand side by side and serve along with you. More information is on their website, which I have listed in the show notes. Visit meganskidmorecoaching.com to find this podcast and additional free resources, including the link for a complimentary coaching session. Follow me on Facebook or Instagram for more, or to send me a DM. Help the podcast grow. Please follow, review, and share with a friend.